Christian in Complete Armour by William Gurnall, dated 1655. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 14b, Gird thy loins. This is chapter 19 of 19. A brief applicatory improvement of the point, both in general and particular branches also. It remains that the point it be applied in its several branches, which are three. Sincerity hath a preserving strength, a restoring strength, and a comforting strength. But for quick dispatch, we shall do it under two heads, blending the two former into one. Use number one. First, therefore, has sincerity, a strengthening virtue, whereby it either preserves the soul by falling into sin, or helps the Christian fallen up again. First, this affords thee, Christian, a further discovery of thy heart, whether sincere or not. Put it here upon the trial. Dost thou find a power imparted to thee, whereby thou art enabled to repel a temptation to sin, when thou hast no weapon left thee to defend thee against it, but the command forbidding it, or some arrow taken out of the quiver of the gospel, such as the love of Christ to thee, thy love to him, and the like? May be the temptation is laid so cunningly that thou mayest sin and save thy credit too, having a back door open to let thee into it secretly. Thou shalt hazard nothing apparently of thy temporal concernment, yea, rather greatly advantage it, if thou wilt hearken to the motion. Only God stands up to oppose it. His Spirit tells it is against his glory, inconsistent with the duty thou owest, and love thou professest to him. Now, speak what thou thinkest of sinning. In the case thou stated, canst thou yet stand it out valiantly, and tell Satan, sin is no match for thee, till thou canst have God's consent and reconcile sinning against him and loving of him together? If so, bless God that hath given thee a sincere heart, and also for opening such a window as this in thy soul, through which thou mayest see that grace to be there, which seen is the best evidence that God can give thee for thy interest in him and life everlasting with him. Wert thou a hypocrite, thou couldst be no more resist a sin so offered than powder fire or chaff the wind. Again, when thou art run down by the violency of temptation, what is the behavior of thy soul in this case? Dost thou rally thy rooted forces and again make head against thy enemy, so much the more eagerly because foiled so shamefully? Or art thou content to sit down quietly by thy loss, and choose rather to be a tame slave to thy lust than to be at any further trouble to continue the war? The false heart is soon cowed, and quickly yields subjection to the conqueror. But the sincere Christian gets heart, even when he loses ground. Uprightness makes the soul rebound higher in holy purposes against sin, but its very falls into sin. Job chapter 40, verse 5. Once have I spoken. He means foolishly, sinfully, but I will not answer. Yea, twice, but I will proceed no further. This made holy David beg of God to be spared a little, that he might have time to recover his strength before he went hence. Lot was he to go beaten out of the field. Might he but live to recover his losses by repentance of, and some victory over, those sins that had weakened and worsened him, then death should be welcome. Like that brave captain who, wounded in fight, desired some to hold him up, that he might but see the enemy run before he died, and he should close his eyes in peace. Deal therefore impartially with thy own soul. Which way do thy falls and failings work? If they wear off the edge from thy conscience, that it is not soon keen and sharp in its reproofs for sins, for they bid thy affections, that thou beginnest to comply with those sins with which formerly thy contest was, and likest pretty well their acquaintancy. Thy heart is not right. But if still thy heart meditates a revenge of thy sin that thou hast overpowered thee, and it lies on thy spirit like undigest meat on a sick stomach. Thou canst have no use, and content to thy troubled soul till thou hast cleared thyself of it, as to the reigning power of it. Truly then thou discoverest a sincere heart. Use 2. Secondly, this shows of what importance it is to labor for sincerity. Without it we can neither stand against nor rise when we fall into temptation. Whatever thou beggest of God, forget not a sincere heart. David saw need of more of this grace than he had. Psalms 51:10. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew in me a right spirit. And happy was it for him. He had so much as to make him desire more of it. What folly is it to build a house with beams on fire? The hypocrite's building must needs come to naught. There is a fire unquenched, the power of hypocrisy unmortified, that will consume all his goodly profession. He carries into the field a heart that will deliver him up into the enemy's hands, and he is sure to be overcome, to whom his own side is not true. Use 3. Thirdly, bless God, O sincere Christian, for this grace. It is a blessing invaluable. Crowns and diadems are not to be compared with it. In this thou hast a heart after God's own heart, a heart to his liking, yea, a heart to his likeness. Nothing makes thee more like God in the simplicity and purity of his nature than sincerity. Truth is that God glories in it. He is a God of truth. When Haman was bid to say what should be done to the man that the king delighted to honor, he, thinking the king meant no other than himself, would fly as high as his ambitions would carry him. And what does he choose but to be clothed with the king's own apparent royal? When God gives thee sincerity, he clothes thy soul with that which he wears himself, who clothes himself with truth and righteousness as a garment. But this thou art made a conqueror, greater than even Alexander was. He overcame the world of men, but thou a world of lust and doubles. Did one bless God at the sight of a toad that God made him a man and not a toad? How much more thankful oughtest thou to be to God, who has made thee, that wert a hypocrite by nature, which is far worse, an upright Christian? If he saith he, a man who chooses death, rather than to have the face and shape of a beast, though he might withal keep the soul of a man, how much more miserable is it under the shape of a man to carry the heart of a beast? Yet such a one is the hypocrite, yea, worse. He not only under the shape of man, but in the disgust of a saint, carries a beastly, filthy heart within him. Use 4. Fourthly, let this encourage thee, who art sincere against the fears of final apostasy. Though sincerity doth not privilege thee from falling, yet thy covenant state, which thou art in, if sincere, secures thee from final apostasy. Because thy stock of grace in hand is small, thou questionest thy persevering. Can these weak legs, thinkest thou, bring me to my journey's end? The few pence in my purse, little grace in my heart, bear my charges all the way to heaven, through so many expenses of trials and temptations. Truly no, if thou wert to receive no more than thou hast at present, the bread thou hast in the cupboard will not maintain thee all thy life. But soul, thou hast a covenant will help thee to more when thou growest low. Hast not God taught thee to pray for thy daily bread? And dost thou not find that the blessing of God in thy calling, diligently followed, supplies thee from day to day? And hast thou not the same bond to sue for thy spiritual daily bread? Hast thou not a Father in heaven that knows what thou needest for thy soul as well as body? Hast thou not a dear brother, yea, husband, that is gone to heaven, where plenty of all grace is to be had, and that on purpose on his children's errand, that he might keep their souls' graces and comforts alive in this necessitous world? All power is in his hand. He may go to the heap and send what he please for your secure. And can you starve while he hath fullness of grace by him that hath undertaken to provide for you? Luke 10:35. The 2 pence which the Samaritan left were not enough to pay for cure and board of the wounded man. Therefore he passed his word, for all that should need besides. Christ does not only give a little grace in hand, but is bound for more to the sincere soul, even as much as he will bring it to heaven. Psalms chapter 84, verse 11. Grace and glory he will give, and no good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly. Use 5. Fifthly, take heed of resting on or glorying in thy sincerity. It is true it will enable thee to resist temptation, and to escape when in temptation. But who enables thee? Where grows the root that feeds thy grace? Not in thy own ground, but in heaven. It is God alone that holds thee, and it in life. He that gave it is at cost to keep it. The Lord is thy strength. Let him be thy song. What can the axe, though sharp, do without the workman? Shall the axe say, I have cut down, or the chisel I have carved? Is it not the skill and the art of the workman rather? When able to resist temptation, say, the Lord was on my side, or else I have fallen. Set up an Ebenezer, and write on it, hitherto the Lord hath helped me. Though God promiseth in the psalm, even now cited, to give grace and glory to the upright, yet he will not give the glory of his grace to uprightness. 2 Samuel 22:24. We have David asserting his uprightness and how he was preserved by it. I was also upright before him, and hath kept me from my iniquity. Verse 25. He declares the fruit of his uprightness, how God bare testimony to it by rewarding him for it, and vindicating him before, and giving him victory over his enemies. Therefore the Lord hath recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanness in his eyesight. Now, lest he should set up himself or applaud his own uprightness to the prejudice of God's grace, he sweetly corrects and bounds these passages. Verse 33, God is my strength and power, and he maketh my way perfect. As if the holy man had said, I pray, mistake me not. I do not ascribe the victory over my enemies within me, or without to myself and my uprightness. No, God did all. He is my strength and power. Yea, it is he that makes my way perfect. If I be sincere more than others in my way, I must thank him for it, for he makes my way perfect. He found me at first as crooked at peace, and walking in a crooked ways as any other, but he made me and my way perfect and straight. Had God pleased, he could have made Saul as perfect as David. Had God left David, he would have been crooked and false-hearted as Saul. The last branch of the point was, sincerity hath a comforting strength in all sorts of affliction, the applicatory improvement of which shall be only this, use. Let it teach us not to fear affliction, but hypocrisy. Believe it, friends, affliction is a harmless thing to a sincere soul. It cannot be so great as to make it inconsistent with his joy and comfort. A gracious soul in the most sharp affliction will spare his tears and pity to bestow them on the hypocrite when in all his pomp and glory. He hath that in his bosom that gives him more comfortable apprehensions of his own afflictions than standers by have or can have of them, which made once a holy man, when the pangs of death were on him, to ask a servant of his, weeping by his bedside, for him, what she meant by her fears, saying, Never fear that my heavenly Father will do me any hurt. Indeed, affliction is not joyous to the flesh, which had made some of God's dear children a while to shrink. But after they have been acquainted with the work and the comforts which God bestows on his poor prisoners through the grape, they have learned another tune, like the bird that at first putting his into the cage flutters and shows her dislike of her restraint, but afterwards comes to sing more sweetly than when at liberty to fly where she pleased. Be not therefore so thoughtful about affliction, but careful against hypocrisy. If the bed of affliction proves hard and uneasy to thee, It is thyself that brings with thee what makes it so. Approve thyself to God, and trust him who hath promised to be his saints' bed maker in affliction, to make it soft and easy for thee. Oh, what a cutting word will it be in a dying hour, when thou art crying, Lord, Lord, have mercy on a poor creature, to hear the Lord say, I know thee not. It is not the voice of a sincere soul, but a hypocrite that howls on his bed of sorrow. What then wilt thou do, when fallen into the hands of God, with whom thou hast but juggled in thy profession, and never sincerely didst love? If that speech was so confounding to the patriarchs, I am Joseph whom thou sold, that they could not endure his presence, knowing their own guilt, how intolerable will it be to hear from God's own mouth such language in a time of distress. I am God, whom you have mocked, abused, and sold away for the enjoyment of your lust. And do you now come to me? Have I anything for you but a hell to torment you in to all eternity? End of Ephesians chapter 6, verse 14b. Gird thy loins. Chapter 19 of 19, read by Peter John Paresis.